Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the second monthly meeting for the Council for the Township of Admaston, Bromley. It is Thursday, May 18th, the appointed hour of 7:30 p.m. I'm calling the meeting to order. I would ask everyone present to please join with me in the observation of a moment of silence to begin our meeting. Thank you. I'd seek a motion to approve this evening's agenda, please.
Moved by myself, second by Keith Gurley. Be it resolved that the council approve the agenda of May 18th, 2023, regular council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Hamilton. Council, all in favor? That is carried. At this point, I would invite disclosure of pecuniary interest and, if any, the general nature thereof. I see none. I would now seek a motion to approve the minutes of the council meeting held May 4th, 2023.
Moved by myself, second by Keith Gurley. Be it resolved that the council adopt the following meeting minutes, May 4th, 2023, regular council meeting.
Thank you so much again, Councillor Hamilton. Council, any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. It is a great pleasure to introduce and welcome back to our chamber Ms. Angela Shute from Welch LLP. And tonight she is going to overview and review the draft financial statements, predominantly the consolidated, but certainly with some discussion of the fire department and the library. Very pleased once again, Ms. Shute, to have you in our chamber, and I will yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Mayor. So good evening. So the audit is just about complete. We have to go over these statements with you and discuss our findings. So to start off, we did complete the audit and we checked and looked over all the controls in place over the finances. And we only have one deficiency to report, but gladly I can say it's been fixed. So it was just something we came across that over the period of January to May of last year, there were payment vouchers that were missed being approved by council. But since then, like I said, it's been coming back to you regularly and you've been approving them. So it's something that happened, and I have to report that, but I'm glad to say it's been rectified. So before I begin, I do want to thank the staff, Kelly and Jennifer and all of their staff, for having us and making us welcome and helping us through understanding your finances. So let's start with the first. I believe you have the consolidated statements first off in front of you. So when I say consolidated, that means both the township books as well as the fire and library. They're all combined into one. So I'm pleased to say there is an unqualified opinion on the statements, which means we believe everything's materially stated properly, which is basically a lot of what the first two pages say in the long two. I'm not sure if you read it or not, but that's the gist of it. So let's start on page 3. So this is the financial position at December 31st of 2022. So this is kind of a snapshot at year end of what the township had and owed. So you'll see at the top, there was cash balance of $860,000, slightly down, but you did have 2 new debentures that you started making payments on during this year. Your taxes receivable were slightly up during the year over the prior year, but that's kind of understandable considering the economy and how some people decide to maybe withhold paying their taxes in lieu of paying other things that have higher interest rates. But I do understand that number is coming down as well, that collections have started on some of those. Accounts receivable is up, so that's money that is owed to the township, library, and fire, like I said, all in one. And this is a little higher this year because not only did you do extra municipal drain work that you can rebill for and to be collected through either the government or from the taxpayers, and as well there was 2 new grants that you still have to receive the money for. You've spent it, and the modernization grant as well is still owing to you. Okay, and please, if you have a question while I go along, feel free to stop me. We can address it right away then. If we look at the liabilities, what was owed at December 31st, the accounts payable and accrued liabilities are your general payments for services that are ongoing typically, and that's fairly consistent one year over the other. Deferred revenue general are typically grants that you have received and not yet spent. So the only one that was spent, or you returned money back for the Main Street funds because you weren't able to utilize those. So that's why the drop from one year to this year. Deferred revenue obligatory. So this is money you have received for specific purposes from third parties, from external parties. So the gas tax and the OSIF funding. So you receive this, and if you don't spend it, it has to go back, but typically you save it up for the next year to use on your next project. And if you want the breakdown of how that was spent and the money that came in, that's on page 12, note 3, for further details. Provision for landfill closure and post-closure costs. This is the estimate to close your 3 landfill sites over the coming year, to close the 1 landfill site, Osceola, and then to continue to do post-closure care on the other 2. Again, this is estimated based on the engineers, what they expect the cost to be, and over the timeline they're expecting it to take. So this is an unfunded liability, which means you don't have money set aside for this, and it is truly an estimate. So I also want to note that next year, the accounting standards for these type of liabilities are changing, so it'll also look different next year as well. But for now, this is the expected cost in the future, over the future years. Long-term debt. Last year's construction loan has been converted to 2 new debentures, as well as you had the extra $282,000 to purchase the tandem truck and some traffic counters. So that's why the increase there. Okay, so if you were to look at everything the municipality consolidated had, that's cash and its receivables, money owed to them, less everything the township owed at the end of the year, there was a net debt of $1.9 million, which sounds like a lot, but you got to remember you have these non-financial assets. So below that line, these are the items that don't have necessarily a specific cash value attached to them, but they do have value to you. So your tangible capital assets are those things, roads, vehicles, equipment, anything that has value beyond 1 year. And you have $13.8 million worth of those. Okay, and the breakdown of those are on Schedule 1. This year you had some additions, roads worth $1.1 million, the tandem truck, as I already said. You had some roof replacements at the Public Works Garage, and then as well we amortize them. So we take an expense each year and write down those assets each year to try to get to zero about when you're going to be done with them or when they no longer have useful value. Okay, so these are accounting PSAB, public sector accounting standards that have to be done. They introduced these rules of setting up tangible capital assets back in 2009. Prior to that, you wouldn't have had these type of things on your financial statements. It was more of a cash basis. So I think it makes it a little more complicated to see our statements now than maybe they used to be in the past. But unfortunately, they thought this was worth value to show these type of things. So The next line, inventory for consumption, that's your diesel fuel that's on hand, gas at year end, salt and sand. It's higher this in 2022 because of the price of the fuel, for one, and the inventory of sand was higher. Prepaid expenses are just those costs that you have incurred in one year that relate to a future year. So the portion of insurance that goes till, say, May or the end of April is shown here now because it's not yet a cost of 22, it's a cost of 23. Okay? So it's something you've paid for in advance of actually using. So the accumulated surplus is $12 million for the year, which I'll break down how that's made up coming up. But are there questions on this statement before I proceed? Anything you'd like further explanation on?
I might just enter, because the Main Street Fund predated this council, and in fact, I think it is quite aged now, if memory serves. Actually, that was an initiative of the former Liberal provincial government that made available, and I think through AMO, if memory serves, I think, which was to indemnify that money from being politically clawed back. In any event, it was meant for facade improvements of buildings, I think particularly in the built-up areas. Main Street Funding was the name of it, and ultimately we bent over backwards and shook the trees and chased the bushes to find places where we could allocate and make use of this, and in the end we were unable to utilize the whole of it. But we've had that in our account, I think, for quite some time. If memory serves, I think that came in 2018. Anyway, I just wanted to make sure one of the things that is heretical in the municipal realm is sending money back to the province. So I thought it would behoove us to identify why in that particular instance we were doing so. On, please.
Okay. If you turn to the next page or scroll down, I guess, page 4 is your consolidated statement of operations. So what happened over the year of 2022? So when comparing your budgets and actual numbers, your property taxes and your payment in lieu of taxes are fairly consistent across the board, as well as your user and frontage charges. When you look at your provincial and other government transfers, it's substantially higher in 22 over 21. You received the modernization grant this year of $119,000, which you use for roads and your organizational review. You received OSIP funding, which was higher this year by $180,000 and was used on South McNaughton Road. And there was also an additional $276,000 in ICIP funding used for the reconstruction of Kenley Road and the drawings of the Douglas Fire Hall. The gas tax funding this year was used for McPeak Road and Campbell Line. So it's lower than the 2021 year, but in 2021, there had been some built up of gas tax funds from the prior years that were used up in 21. Your investment income is higher, just thankfully for the extra interest being earned on your bank accounts, the increased interest rate. Now we look at the loss on disposal of tangible capital assets of $281,000. So that looks like a scary number, but it's not. It's not a cash number. It's not that you lost $281,000. What it is it's a book value. So remember I talked about the tangible capital assets that are set up that have lasting value on the books and how we slowly write them off over time. Well, for some of these roads that you've reconstructed this year, the value wasn't yet fully written off. So it still had value for book purposes. But now we've got rid of them, and now we've redone those roads and added them to your asset pool again. So it's just the value that was sitting on the books for those specific assets that are no longer there. But again, it's not a cash loss there.
Sorry, can I ask a question on that one, Angela? Is that germane only to real property assets, or is that across all of the TCAs?
That's all the TC. So that's your roads. There was a few trucks in there.
Okay.
Some equipment, yes.
Okay,
But
thank you.
roads is the biggest reason for that number.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So about $4 million in revenue last year for the consolidated township. If we go down to expenses, broken up by segment, general government. So first of all, wages are, as you know, have increased after the structural review this past year. So all of the segments are a little higher than the prior year just for that alone. Now, just to offset, you did use $45,000 from your reserve to help pay for some of those extra wages. So general government, it includes the cost of the organizational review last year, as well as the election costs and the purchase of your council laptops and the audio-visual equipment that you have in here. So that's why it's higher in 22 than 21. Protection to persons and property is mainly just an increase due to the wage increase. And I can report that your police contract's down about $10,000 from the prior year. Transportation services. So the actuals look quite a bit higher than the budget, but you have to remember, you don't budget for amortization. That's the write down of your tangible capital assets you take each year. That's not something you're required to budget for, and it's not something you do. So we look at the budget number to the actual. You got to remember there's a large number in there for the write down of those roads specifically and other linear assets. Environmental services, there's a decrease this year. Partly it's just the change in the estimated cost of the post-closure care. So it was a large increase expense in the 2021. It was about half of that in 22. The other two, recreation and culture and planning and development, are fairly comparable year over year. So there's an excess of expenses over revenue of $467,000. Again, this is for PSAB purposes. This is taking into account the amortization I keep talking about, your changes in reserve, and this unfunded landfill closure costs. So it's not an operating deficit. So I want to be clear about that. It's not, if you were to compare your budget to the actual comparable lines, you wouldn't come to 467 for what was in the budget. But I do want to break down the accumulated surplus of $12 million for you so you can see how that's made up. But before we go there, is there questions on this page?
Councillor Hamilton.
I assume as you break down that 12,000, you will talk about that amortization number that you've referred to several times that we don't know what it is yet.
I can show you on Schedule 1, page 7. If you go down under accumulative amortization, the annual amortization, if on the right, was $1.477 million this year. So that was the amount for book purposes that we took as an expense and is included in these expense numbers on this statement.
You said 1 point.
1.477.
Gotcha.
You see it? Yeah.
Anything further, Councillor Hamilton? Okay, thank you. Back to you then, Ms. Shute.
Okay. So then Let's look at page 14. I'm going to skip a lot of pages. And note 8. So this is where your $12 million cumulative surplus, the makeup of that. So right on the top of that page, your unrestricted surplus or operating surplus for the general, for the township alone, was $123,266. Then we also have to include, because these are consolidated, the Douglas Fire Department's surplus of $19,770 and the libraries of $6,344. So also in that 12 million is the internally restricted reserves. So what that means is those are the funds that council has decided to put away in reserves, like a savings, to use for future purchases. You have specific reserves set up for specific, say, like replacing a truck or other roads, fire equipment. You have quite a few more reserves now that you're setting some money aside for future use. And they're called internally restricted because as council, you've decided how they're to be used in the future. You can decide to change that as well if you want, but there's no third party telling you how you can or can't use those funds. Okay, so you have $877,000 sitting as part of this surplus to be used for what you've already decided to put this money away for. We also show the $442,000 for the post-closure care that is unfinanced, and then that equity intangible capital assets, which is the value of your assets less your debt. Any questions on that? Because I know it is not as straightforward.
I think that you're doing a spectacular job. Ms. Shute, there are no questions.
Okay. So those are the main highlights of the consolidated statement. If no one has any questions on those, I know there's a lot of other pages in there if you want to read through those notes. And if you ever have questions and Kelly can't answer them, she could pass them on to me as well.
Okay, thank you very much. So on anything that Ms. Shute has presented, or if there's anything that occurred to you, Council, as you've been reviewing, these were provided earlier this week, you have had opportunity to review each page. Is there anything that you would seek clarity for this evening on the consolidated statements? Okay, I am seeing none.
Okay. Well, let's move on. I believe the Douglas Fire Department is the next financial statements in your package. Again, I'm pleased to say that we have an unqualified opinion on that as well, meaning we believe everything's materially stated properly on those financial statements. So again, page 3 of these statements is your statement of financial position, the snapshot of everything owned and owed at December 31st. So the fire department had cash of almost $29,000 at that point in time. Accounts receivable has some outstanding insurance claims and some fire billings to be collected at that time. Due from township is HST to be paid back to the fire department that the township has actually submitted for them to get that money back, as well as a $10,000 surplus transfer that council decided to help fund a reserve for the fire department for future equipment purchases. The liabilities are mostly an estimate of the firefighter costs for their wages for the month of December, because they're paid out annually between December 1st and November in a year. So this is just an estimate of what December costs would be, as well as a few ongoing costs like fuel and phone and hydro and those sort of things are what's included in accounts payable. So items that were for 2022 but maybe not paid until January of 23. Again, they have non-financial assets made up of prepaid expenses, which is the portion of insurance in their case that relates to January to April of 23. And they have tangible capital assets as well, their fire hall and equipment of $298,000. So their accumulated surplus is $347,000. Questions on that page before we continue?
Once again, I think we can continue.
Okay. Next page, page 4, the statement of operations. So township levies is, of course, what the township has given to the fire hall or the fire department to help fund their expenditures, as well as some standby fees. You'll see the fire calls are fairly reflective across the board from one year over the next. In 21, there was a fire grant that was received for $5,300, but no grants were received this year. If we look at the town down a few lines, township contribution for the fire garage project. I just want to explain what that is. So you paid some survey fees and some drawing costs for the future addition of the fire hall, and the township actually paid those costs on behalf of the fire department. So this is like showing money earned by the fire hall, but it's still just coming from the township. And you don't see them on the consolidated because it is just between two different departments, really, so it gets canceled out. Okay? And similarly, the township contribution to the fire reserve, that's that $10,000 that council decided to move from their capital reserve over to a fire hall, a fire reserve for equipment. Okay? So their revenue was $244,000. Expenditures, again, wages and benefits increased due to the organizational review. Many of the other lines are fairly consistent. I mean, heat and hydro costs were up last year. Insurance, of course, was up as well. That's just the way things are going. Maintenance and repairs, you'll see that looks substantially higher this past year than the other year. Now, it also grounds and equipment maintenance were up about $8,000, but also in this number includes some firefighting gear of about $15,000. Boots and gloves and hoods are in there. So that's why that number does look higher over the prior year. Okay. Again, that amortization of tangible capital assets, that write-down of $22,000 for book purposes, giving them a total expense of $226,000. And they had excess revenue, so a surplus, $18,270. But again, this is the PSAB surplus. When we back out the amortization and the money moved to the reserves, there's actually an operating surplus last year of $19,770. So that's the true operating surplus for them, which you can see on note 2 of page 9. Are there any questions on the fire department statements?
Oh, we're making fantastic time.
Yes.
Carry on.
Okay. We will move on to the library statements. Now, this report looks slightly different. Not that it's a bad thing, but just so you're aware, we do have to qualify our opinion on donations and fundraising, which is typical in any not-for-profit organization that collects cash and does fundraising, and because we can't really verify that all the cash made it to the bank account. Not that we expect that it didn't, but we just can't prove it. So we can't say for sure that it's all complete in there. So that's why this report looks slightly different. But again, it's nothing to be alarmed. All not-for-profit organizations typically have this qualification. So again, if you look at page 3, the financial position of the library at December 31st, they had cash of $9,668, and they had a few things owing. $1,533 was the makeup of their MasterCard that was owing, internet and photocopies. So not a whole lot there at the library, but due to townships, so they had some wages to be reimbursed back to the township, and that's what's included in that line. The library owed the township because the township pays on their behalf. Okay, so their net, if you take their cash less what they owed, they'd have financial assets of $5,786. Again, they have some prepaid expenses there, but that relates to their software fees and web hosting costs that related to 2023, leaving them with an accumulated surplus of $6,344. Assuming there's no questions, we'll flip to page 4. Their statement of operations. So again, they have their municipal grants includes the money coming from council, from the township over to the library to help them fund their operations. So that was $21,600 last year. As well, they get a Bonaire Valley amount of $652, and that seems to be an annual amount. Their provincial grants, they get a public library operating grant, and they had a connectivity grant as well last year. Their donations and fundraising is higher because they received a $5,000 donation, which they used to purchase computers. So overall, they had $40,000 in revenue last year, up from the $36,000 the prior year. Expenses are also up to $40,000, up from $33,000 in the year. Again, salaries, the librarian got a bump in their wage. The other bigger line would be the office and miscellaneous. They purchased a new safe book return unit of $18,000. Their special programs include fundraising costs as well. So overall, they spent $902 more than they received in revenue last year. They started with a surplus, accumulated surplus of $7,246. So that 902 just reduces that surplus that they've been building over the years to leave them with $6,344. And now this statement is a little less complicated because they don't have anything to muddy the waters with capital assets, or they don't have reserves either at this point. So the 902 is their actual operating deficit last year.
Once again, Councillor, any questions on this page? Seeing none, carry on.
That's actually all I have to present to you.
Okay, outstanding. So perhaps on the off chance that something has occurred to you on any one of these statements, or in fact the consolidated statements, one further and final opportunity. Any question, comment? Seeing none, very much appreciate you being here this evening, Ms. Shute. We are going to advance typically the resolution to approve, adopt, I guess, the financial statements would be at the Finance Committee, but we are going to advance that ahead of any of the committee reports, just so as to cross these T's and dot these I's while you are still present in the chamber. So, Councillor Gourley, I believe you have that resolution.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Hamilton. Be it resolved that Council adopt the draft 2022 financial statements prepared by Welch LLP accountants.
Thank you. Councillor, you've heard the resolution. All in favour? That is carried. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here this evening, and thank you for all the efforts of you and your staff in compiling the financial statements.
Yes, thank you, Angela. I know that we pushed you very hard because it's been quite a first quarter of 2023, so thank you very much.
And with that then, Councillor Gorley, the Planning and Economic Development Committee report. The floor is yours.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Hamilton. Be it resolved that Council accepts the April 2023 Building and Sewage Report.
Thank you. Anything you wish to underscore? Councillor Gorley?
Nothing particular. It looks like we have a little catch up to do on some permits to catch up from previous years.
Just slow out of the gate, perhaps.
Slow out of the
We're
gate
not
this
fast
year.
starters this year.
Correct.
Council, any question, comment on the Building and Sewage Report? Seeing none, all in favour? That is carried.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Hamilton. Be it resolved that Admaston Bromley Council approve bylaw 2023-21, being a bylaw to authorize the township to enter into an agreement with Michael and Jerry Enright to permit an existing dwelling to remain on site while a new dwelling is being constructed.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gorley. Ms. Charkavy, did you want to speak to this of what the particulars are that are driving this consideration?
Yes, so we've had a couple of these in previous years, but new council members may not have seen this. We have property owners who have an existing building, like a house, and they want to replace it, so they're going to live in the existing building while they build their new home, so it becomes a temporary dwelling that we're giving them permission to live in while they build. And as you know, you can't have two homes on most properties, so that's why this has to come before council for approval. And then they are required to have it demolished within a certain amount of time of the occupancy permit being completed on the new building.
Thank you. Councillor Legree.
So since we since we passed that bylaw that now allows you to have two dwellings on one building, why is this still necessary in this case?
So I believe in this case they don't meet the requirements of the secondary dwellings. I don't think it has the acreage or it's too close to the other one. There has to be that separation between the two. In any case, these homeowners wanted to follow this process, which we still have available.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that forward. Councillor Legree, the long-standing standard in the province of Ontario was one residence per lot, as we all know, because of the incredibly constrained inventory of housing stock. Many measures have been implemented to try and dramatically increase that. And as Councillor Legree had noted, one of them is the secondary dwellings within a property. The other thing I think that, this is probably as good an opportunity as any. We also do not allow for mobile homes in the municipality of Admaston Bromley, except for their temporary use in essentially the same set of circumstances. When a new home is being constructed on a temporary basis, we do provide that as a temporary residence until such time as the occupancy permit is provided on the new building. So, any further questions on the resolution before us? I will call the question. All in favor? That is carried. And thank you, Councillor Gorley. That wraps up the Planning and ECDEV. Community Services Committee, Councillor Field, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Legree. Be it resolved that Council receive the Douglas Recreation Minutes from April 12th, 2023.
Thank you. Within the minutes, anything in particular you wish to underline? Okay, thank you. Council, any questions, comments on the minutes of the Douglas Recreation Committee? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. And back to you once again, Councillor Field.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Legree. Be it resolved that council enter into a recreation agreement with the Township of Vonshire Valley for the years 2023, 2024, and 2025. And be it resolved that council direct staff to bring a report back to council summarizing resident participation in the fall of 2025 so that council may utilize that information to establish parameters for a new agreement.
Thank you once again, Councillor Field. Ms. Charkavy, you wish to speak to this, please?
Okay, so council will have seen a report we brought previously concerning the agreement that Vonshire Valley Township is seeking. Staff were directed to get information from the town of Renfrew for comparison. We do have that information now, and that's on page 2 of the report. In 2022, Town of Renfrew records were a total of 238 residents. That is broken down on the attachment for you. Equates to approximately $110 per user. In 2021, we do have to remember there was COVID as well. Still, we had 192 residents. I went back and forth over trying to decide what was best for the township from staff recommendation. Council will ultimately make that decision. In speaking with the treasurer, it would be, for budgeting purposes, be good to know what we're going to pay for the next couple of years. Vonshire Valley had originally requested for a 5-year term. Staff are thinking if we do 3 years, we can see what it's like after 3 years, and if it's not worth it, not enough participation, then we can go back to what we were originally going to do. The residents will pay and come to us for reimbursement of the user fee. So that is why staff made that recommendation, to give it a chance to see numbers could increase. If numbers increase over the $2,000, it's a win for the township. And if they don't, then we're paying a little bit more for recreation. In the end, though, we are having people participate in recreation, which is the ultimate goal. And Vonshire Valley did bring the cost down. So that is why staff changed their recommendation to say, let's do this for a 3-year period and then reassess in 2025.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Charkavy. Any question, comment, discussion? Councillor Legree.
I'm in favor of the resolution, other than I'd rather see the 5 years, to be honest. For one, 3 years puts it back to this council, or would it in 3 years?
2026 will be the next election, so it's still this council that's reviewing it. That's why I chose 2025 as well.
I guess there's logic to that. I was just thinking my fear would be more that Vonshire Valley would realize that they gave us too good of a deal and they try to raise the price in 3 years from now, where I'd rather we hang on to it for 5. That was my only reasoning, but if I'm the one that feels that way, then 3 years is fine too. 3 years is good.
Thank you, Councillor Legree. What I would suggest too is the intent here is to provide some more certainty to both municipalities. What I would suggest is whether it is this or whether it is the agreement with the town of Renfrew, I think that there is ancillary benefit to both Vonshire Valley and to the town of Renfrew in this, that if we were not to engage, I think it would tend to diminish participation. So there's a value there in the initial report that I think has been copied in here as well into this report. We are seeing it once again. It is also removing from them essentially the bill collecting role. So I think we should be careful about viewing this as the value that is being derived. I think, quite frankly, I'm in agreement with Ms. Charkavy. What we are doing, and it's important to keep this in mind, what we are doing is we are not subsidizing the Township of Vonshire Valley. We are subsidizing our ratepayers to participate in recreation events in a neighboring municipality, which is precisely what we are doing with the town of Renfrew as well, is we are providing those resources to our ratepayers to avail themselves of recreation opportunities. So I am certainly quite satisfied with the report as written. I think 3 years is a pretty good timeline to work out any bugs, to identify perhaps challenges. I am hopeful, in fact, that it might be a fairly straightforward renewal process in 3 years. Anything further? Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, I also support the recommendations from the township, or from the staff. But in reading the report, I'm noticing in one of the paragraphs that, what is it? Financial implications. Down, the Township of Boncher Valley is asking for agreement to begin at 2,000, starting in 23. In 2022, there were 1,200 recreational users. Is that in Boncher Valley total?
There are, in fact, only 12. That was a typo.
Okay.
The 1,200. I was caught by that too. I thought, wow, $1.50 that it's costing us.
That's just, thanks. So it was 12.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. That's the only clarification I was looking for.
I would say that if we revive the participation, we would have to be inordinately pleased that a third of our population were availing themselves of recreation opportunities. It did catch me as well, but it is, alas, those zeros crept in there. Anything further? All in favor? That is carried. Thank you, Councillor Field. Going directly to Councillor Hamilton and the April Public Works report, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Gurley. Be it resolved that the council received the Public Works April 2023 report. And I will.
Thank you. I would invite Mr. Wazinski, do you wish to speak to the monthly report?
Thank you. April was a pretty decent month to us, other than one special event still, which the last time we occurred that was in 2019, so it's a bit rare. There was 10 centimeters of snow in 2019, April 9th, sorry. Other than that, we're very pleased with our traffic counters. We've had them up for a month now. We're getting some really good information off of them, so they're being user-friendly in a sense, and we're documenting all that. Upcoming events, we're just kind of getting ramped up for our summer jobs. We're dealing with contractors for our line painting, our pest control. We're getting that all in order. We're working on some crack sealing, cold patching, stuff like that right now. Once things dry up a little bit more for us, our ditching and culvert changing will begin then too.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions, comments on the Public Works report? A couple that have occurred to me. So the traffic counters, these are ours. We're done with the loaners.
That's correct. They
Excellent.
are ours now.
Excellent. That has been an odyssey. The other question is, and not to put you on the spot, Mr. Wazinski, but when do you anticipate having tenders for the Capital Works program expected for this year?
Tenders are already made up, just waiting to be sent out once budget is approved.
Excellent. Outstanding. Very pleased to hear that. Thank you. Once again, Council, anything further? Seeing nothing, all in favor? That is carried. There is nothing from Waste Management Committee this evening. Finance and Administration, we have dealt with item 11A. We are on to item 11B. Councillor Gorley, I'm led to believe you may have this.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Hamilton. Be it resolved, the council received the April 2023 payment register.
Thank you very much. With that, I will yield. Ms. Coughlin, anything you wish to underscore?
No, I don't have anything to add unless council has any specific questions.
Thank you. Council, any questions, comments on the register? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. That concludes Finance and Administration. We are directly into Protective Services. I believe, Councillor Agree, you may be starting us off here.
Okay, so the resolutions that have 12A and B are together and 12C and D are together. So I'll read the resolution for 12A and B first. Moved by myself, seconded by Angela Field. Be it resolved that Council received the Fire Committee minutes from the following meetings: March 8th, 2023 and April 19th, 2023.
Thank you, Councillor Legree. Councillor Legree, anything that you wish to direct Council's attention to?
So from the March one, I don't have anything to add. I'll ask the fire chief if there's anything he wants to add from that one. Okay, from the April one, I'm going to once again ask the fire chief to speak to the old business with the 14 fire personnel, and because I just figure it's better if you speak to it than me.
Thank you. With the old business, as far as the 14 fire personnel, I'm assuming we're talking about the certification, which has been gone from the grandfathering to the legacy program. And we were fortunate enough, we qualified to put 14 firefighters in under the legacy program. We have 6 others that are now fully certified on their own, which leaves us with 5 to certify over the next 18 months to bring everybody up to certification standards on the fire department.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, any questions, comments? One of the concerns, perhaps as we were rolling out, leading up to the new regime and rolling it out, do we anticipate it to be it is always going to be somewhat of a challenge. There was concerns that this was going to be an extreme challenge to qualify or onboard to the new qualifications firefighters. Have those concerns been somewhat alleviated? Do we anticipate that this is not a terribly involved process to get the certification?
Yes, with us being allowed to train our own personnel now, that has taken a big chunk of the onus off of us to have to train as a group of 25. We will still train together. The problem being that as we go down the road, hiring and retaining is going to be our biggest it's always been a challenge. Without a doubt, it's been a challenge, and we've always trained. We need to keep better paperwork, better track of our training, but the onus is now on the new hires to put in what they're saying is anywhere from 90 to 130 hours of training for new hires. Any firefighters that would like to progress up the ladder to be captains, lieutenant, any of that, there will be added costs to that, and those people will 100% have to be taken away out of our area to be trained. So there will be added costs to that. We must soon start into a hierarchy program where we need to see where we're going in 5, 8, 10 more years down the road, and those people will have to come up through our ranks, we hope. But as far as the initial point of what they had said, where everybody was going to have to maybe go back and start at square one, that is off the table now. We met with the OFM, we've had several meetings with them, and being able to train ourselves is by far and away the biggest step towards what we can do as a fire hall on our own now.
Okay, thank you. And that did, Chief McHale, address my concern. I know in the initial iteration of what these new requirements were going to be, there was grave concern that onboarding any new recruit was going to mean having to send them somewhere for their training. Which would, of course, they would be compensated as active duty while they were doing that. The challenge that was foreseen was with volunteer fire forces, typically they are employed and hold a job, and it would require them utilizing holidays. So the township would certainly be paying them as firefighters for being away, but they would have to commit their vacation time from their jobs towards training. So I think that is an enormous hurdle. Essentially what you are saying, and this was part of the discussions for the last several years, train the trainer is acceptable, that the training can be done within the fire department up to and including the ranks of the firefighters. If a firefighter has an expression, and we are going to continue to have a need for leadership positions, the captains, chief, deputy chief, etc., that is still going to require training outside of the municipality. But that's a big achievement and a big change from what the initial anxieties were on what the regime was going to be for training. So it seems to me that it has, perhaps there's some water been introduced to the wine. So I'm very pleased to hear that. The other thing I think that is important to note is that the Douglas Fire Department has had exceptional training for years and years. I don't think, Chief McHale, that you would be alone in perhaps all of the training has not been documented at each step along the way. It has been priority, paramount importance, that anyone that is within the ranks of the Douglas Fire Department is adequately trained for their own health and safety when they are fighting fires. What it is there has to be a diligence with respect to recording and reporting on all of the training initiatives. So commend you and Deputy Chief for your efforts in this. I know that it has been perhaps traumatic is overstating it, but it has certainly been anxiety-inducing. Perhaps there are nights when sleep doesn't come easily. Hopefully that has been mitigated now as we have been making some of these changes.
Yes, the OFM has provided us with skill sheets that we do need to fill out. Every firefighter will be filling these out. I say that the new recruits will have to train. We need to train with them. And then from there, the OFM does send proctors in to do both the physical, when I say physical, it's practical testing and the written tests that we will have to take in order to advance into the Firefighter 1 category and then into Firefighter 2.
Very pleased to hear that. Thank you. Outstanding. Any further questions, Council? Okay, so on the resolution germane specifically to the minutes of March 8th and April 19th of the Fire Committee, all in favour? Carried.
Okay, so the next two items, 12C and D. Move myself, second by Angela Field. Be it resolved, the council receive the fire chief's reports for the following months: April 2023 and May 2023.
Thank you once again, Councillor Legree. And Chief, anything you wish to direct Council's attention to in particular?
Thank you. Just the two items that are new, I have reached out to the Mennonite community with a smoke alarm program, as we had talked about. It's being accepted rather well, I think. I have to go back again next Thursday for another meeting with them. And also the Communications Committee, as we've been in progress with the Chiefs Committee, even Pembroke, has come up with some resolutions as to changes going to be made at the CAC Centre, and that's coming down the pipe as well, but it's not here as of yet.
Okay, thank you. And I was actually, thank you, Chief McHale, for reminding me, and I know it was in part of the minutes, one of those minutes was talking specifically about the fire communications. So I did receive more clarity at, I think it was the April County Council meeting, because I've been confused because there is essentially the network that facilitates the bouncing of the signal across the county or in most parts of the county. This in particular it is a parallel dispatch system that sits on the desk at the Central Ambulance Communications Centre over adjacent to Renfrew Victoria Hospital. And that dispatching equipment that is there dates from the inception of 911 and the legacy funding provided through the Ontario the International Plowing Match that was held in Pembroke in '94. This equipment is from there. For those who might be familiar with software, apparently it is still operating on Microsoft XP. I don't know how many generations ago XP was the operating system, but it's not been supported in years, and it has been working. In any event, that has provided some clarity. I think perhaps there is some discussion about the age and condition of the larger network, but this is with respect to the equipment that is sitting in front of the dispatchers at that building over on the RVH grounds. Ms. Charkeby.
I'll just add that we have a report coming to our June 1st council meeting.
Outstanding. Thank you very much. Anyway, thank you, Chief. Very pleased on both of those. Anything further, Council? All in favor? Carried.
Okay, and for my last item tonight, moved by myself, second by Angela Field, be it resolved that council received the correspondence from the Emergency Management Ontario indicating that the municipality has satisfied all 13 program elements required under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act for 2022.
Thank you, Councillor Legree. Anything you wish to speak to, Ms. Charkeby?
2022 was a very difficult year to get compliance, and Chief and Deputy Chief can attest to that, all the emails that I was sending back and forth. There were many more hoops to go through. Emergency Management Committee has already met once this year to review a draft bylaw that we hope to review. Our Emergency Management Program Committee bylaw and our plan has not been reviewed or updated in a very long time, which was part of the reason we had such difficulty getting compliance this year. So I was very, very happy to receive this letter. It was a stressful time to get it, and we're hoping that 2023 will be much easier.
Thank you. I was disappointed to find out yesterday at the Health Committee at the County of Renfrew, there was a similar letter with respect to the county's emergency, and it turned out that in fact it is a typo. I would draw council's attention to the very bottom of page, the last sentence beginning on page 24 and ending on 25, wherein we are being congratulated on our municipality's efforts in meeting our MCA requirements in 2023, but alas, that is a typo, and in fact, we will have to go through the exercise once again.
I actually did put 2023 on the motion in the first place, and then I'm like, wait, no, it's 2022.
So that was terribly disappointing. I thought we were giving special provision for all of the work that we did. In any event, any further question, comment? Congratulations, I think, to the Emergency Management Control Group. Ms. Charkeby, please extend that both to yourself and to the group. Please extend to that. With that, all in favor? That is carried. There is nothing from the County of Renfrew this evening. Bylaws with respect to the temporary secondary dwelling. And this is Councillor Hamilton, I believe.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Gurley. Be it resolved that the council adopt the following bylaws. 23-21 temporary dwelling agreement.
Thank you. Council, we reviewed this earlier in the planning report. Once again, any opportunity for questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Old business action tracking list. Councillor Field.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Legree. Be it resolved that the council receive the action tracking list as information.
Thank you. Council, any questions or comments? Well, first, I guess, Ms. Charkeby, anything you wish to speak to?
I have nothing to update this meeting.
Thank you. Council, any questions? All in favor? Carried. New business. I see none. There was no requirement for a closed session at time of mailing. Does that continue to hold true? Yes. Ms. Charkeby, it does. Thank you. Confirmatory bylaw. Once again, Councillor Field, I believe this is yours.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Legree. Be it resolved that bylaw 2023-22, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Township of Admaston, Bromley at the meeting held May 18th, 2023, be now numbered, deemed read 3 times, and passed.
Thank you, Councillor Field. Council, all in favor? That is carried. Question period. Anything from the AV staff?
Not at this moment.
Outstanding. Thank you. With that, Councillor Ree, everyone's favorite motion.
Moved by myself, second by Angela Field, be it resolved that Thursday, May 18th, 2023, Township of Admaston Bromley Council meeting be adjourned at 8:35 p.m.
Thank you. Council, all in favor? We are